Welcome to a couple of expats. I am Gabriella and this is John. We are a couple of expats from the US living in the Netherlands. We are now on episode 8 and we've got a very boring but important topic for this week. So we are going to be diving into the whole visa process. It's something I've gone through 3 times now, John twice. So we'll speak a little bit about our own personal experience with the visa process. So because it's a little boring, we'll try to keep it nice and short for you. Something you can listen to quick, especially if you are looking to move abroad. But before we jump into that, since our last episode, we have had a couple of different travels. John has spent some time in Malta, and we actually made a trip back to the US for a family event. So, John, why don't you share a little bit about your experience in Malta?
Yeah, I think Malta was really cool. It was, I guess I didn't really realize what Malta was going to be. I had just really wanted to go there because I knew there was a lot of history there. On the History Channel, there was a couple of episodes about megalithic structures there that were like really super old. No one really has the history about how they were made or why they were made. So I really wanted to check that out. There's also 3 islands there in Malta. It's like an archipelago. And so I spent my time between the top island, Gozo, and then the mainland Malta island where Valletta is. Really good food, very affordable, and very hospitable. So it was very, very nice and pretty warm too. So it's easy to get around. People are super nice, and they do a good job with making sure that like tourist attractions are ready to go and like it's not very clunky. So yeah, it was a really good time. I highly recommend checking it out. Yeah, and it was really interesting when I was there too. There's some interesting artifacts of like when you get into Valletta of like military fortress stuff and like how the US helped Malta. So that was very interesting as well. So overall, check it out. Probably not the most pristine beaches, but very nice waters and very good food. So definitely check it out.
Was there any special food specific to Malta?
They had these things called like pasticces and then casasat or something, but pasticces is like a phyllo dough type thing with like ricotta cheese inside and other things, among other things. And then they had this other thing that was like a little like pie, but it had like lentils and peas like mushed up in it, and that was very tasty. Even though it was like pretty warm, that was like a very flavorful and not all that like overbearing like food. So that was really good. But it is a lot of like Mediterranean food, so you'll see like fish, mullets, and like I had a fillet of fish called an amberjack. So it was very, very tasty. I've been kind of on the Mediterranean food kick, and this definitely continued that trend for sure.
Nice. And then we also made a trip into Washington, D.C. for a family event. It was our first time back in the U.S. in a while. To be honest, I don't always get too excited to go back to the U.S. It doesn't excite me like any of the other travels we do. So nice to see family. But beyond that, I kind of like to keep my travels outside the U.S., just because it's more exciting to me. Did you enjoy anything specific about our time in DC?
Yeah, I hadn't actually been to DC in quite some time, like since I was a kid. So for me, it was very like interesting to see what the city was like. I thought it was actually like pretty clean, but it was nice, like to like just like be in a U.S. city that had like museums and stuff. Went to the African.
You live in a city with so many museums.
Yeah, but like going to the African American Museum, I've never been there. That was really cool. And I actually didn't know this, but David Rubenstein, who I actually really liked, I've read a couple of his books, and I like watching his show on Bloomberg. And I really saw that it was the David Rubenstein Galleries. That was really interesting to me. On my bookshelf over here, I have a couple of his books. So I if you guys don't know who that he manages the Carlisle group. So, but anyways, I thought it was really good. And then I saw my uncle's name on the Vietnam War Memorial. My uncle passed away in Vietnam. And so that was really cool to see. Very, very hot though on the mall. Very, very hot. I was like going up the Lincoln Memorial. I was like, wow.
Yeah, the reason it feels so
hot
hot is because it's currently the 6th of July and not even pushing 60 degrees. So
yeah.
if we look a little bit bitter and miserable, that's because we're begging for summer and still stuck in winter. So we apologize. We got strong windstorms coming in today, heavy rain, and gray skies and cold. So
and I think today actually there's going to be 60 to 90 kilometer an hour winds this afternoon.
Literally just said strong winds.
And so it's going to be interesting because there's going to be like watch parties for the Turkey and Netherlands game tonight at 9. And I honestly
for the
don't
Euro
know.
Cup, for those who are not big European football fans, every year they have a Euro Cup. Most countries participate, have their team represented, and it's just a huge football tournament. They're now in the quarterfinals, and yeah, like John said, Netherlands are playing Turkey, so the city is decked out in orange. We're really hoping for a Netherlands wins because it is just a vibe, and it's so fun.
Yeah,
we tried to go to a couple watch parties for the last game, but Bargs are just honestly packed shoulder to shoulder, and honestly just like dead silent. Everybody's so into the game, until something happens. So it's definitely an experience.
And it's every 4 years. It's a 4-year cycle for the Euro Cup. But yeah, so I think that's I think that's why everybody's like so into it, because it's like instead of the World Cup, right? It's like the Euro Cup. But I don't know. I don't know Turkey's team, but I do know that like if you know anything about like football or like soccer in America, like the Netherlands has a pretty decent team. Like they have Virgil van Dijk, they have Gakpo, so they have some pretty decent players. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to be very intense. I know there's watch parties at literally like every bar in like around Amsterdam tonight. So
yeah, there'll be zero traffic on the streets.
It was weird.
Just people attending to the game.
It was like peak rush hour the other day, and it was like a 6 p.m. game. It was peak rush hour. We just looked down like the main street in our neighborhood when there's like tons of bikes at like 6 p.m. and there was just literally no bikes. Like everybody was watching the game. It was crazy.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Just going back to DC, I do have to give a big shout out to my family. We thought we had 0 listeners and followers, but turns out we have so many. So just big shout out to all my family members who are supporting us. We really appreciate it. And that was that definitely made it worth going to DC to hear.
For sure. Yeah,
we're definitely supported. So thanks, y'all.
Now you all have to like plan your trips over here now and visit us now that you've heard the podcast and us talk about the Netherlands. So, but yeah, it was very good to meet everybody and hear everybody that listened.
Yeah. So let's move on to visas. So we have both originally came over to Europe / the UK through work visas. So that process is pretty straightforward. It didn't require much from us. I guess I'll start and I'll talk just on my experience going to the US to UK on a work visa. Like I said, my company pretty much handled everything. They supplied the lawyer, and the lawyer manages everything. They pretty much just reach out to me for all the necessary paperwork, copies of passports, birth certificates, whatever that process entails. And it doesn't require much paperwork beyond identification. Anyway, and then they come back to you with all the signatures. So there's a lot of things you have to sign. And you do have to go through a biometric process, which when I was going to the UK, I was fortunate enough to be able to do it in the US. So I went to a biometric center. It was like in a strip mall, a little sketchy, but had an appointment there, took my fingerprints, took my pictures. And then once that was processed, that allowed my visa to go through. From there, the one scary part I remember is I had to send in my passport to an embassy. I'm guessing it was a UK embassy. I really don't remember at the time. I was still in the US. I had to send that in so they could put the official visa in my passport. So I was without a passport for a while. For a while, I mean like a week or two. Then I finally received that passport with that visa in it, and I could head on my way to the UK. From there, once I arrived in the UK, I had to pick up my residence permit. You had to like 10 days to pick it up. I pretty much picked it up right away. And that was it. I was set. I was on a 3-year visa, skilled worker visa, and I was set to go. There wasn't many complications. It was a really smooth process. And this was even in the midst of COVID, where things took a little bit slower. But I think from start to finish, within about 3 weeks, I was in the UK. So, John, why don't you share your experience?
Yeah.
With John worked for more of a corporate company, where I worked for more of like a small business. So he even had more hands on deck than I did beyond just a lawyer.
Yeah. So I had come over here in 2019 for a small work stint. And so I had already kind of maybe didn't even realize it at the time, but started the process by getting a BSN in the Netherlands, which is essentially like a social security number over here to get a bank account. And so when the opportunity came to come over here in 2021, that was already there and that was like already started, which helped a lot. But I had an immigration specialist at my company who worked with a company in Brussels named Fragment. They're a multinational company, but they were doing all of the immigration work. And then I also had a relocation specialist here in the Netherlands that helped me like pick out an apartment, do rental packages until my container came over with all my stuff, and stuff like that. But somewhat of a similar process where it was kind of like, hey, here's the role, here's what we, Fragment, the company was like, hey, here's what we need from you. And then so once things kind of got rolling and I came over here, I was able to go to an appointment at the IND, which is like the Immigration and Naturalization Department, I think. And they did all the biometrics. So you get your irises and your fingerprints and all that good stuff. And then they also give you a stamp, which at that point, unlike in Gabriella's, where she had to give her passport away, they just put in the stamp in my passport right then and there. And then right there, after that, I gave a picture to Fragment, and then they essentially completed the process, which was great because then after that process was done, it kind of initiated and finalized a process to get my residence permit. And when you have your residence permit, then you really start like getting integrated because you can get like utilities set up at your place. You can get a cell phone, you can get all this other stuff. And it helps out. And actually in some of the websites here, you need to like log in, and actually the residence permit over here has NFC in it or RFID. So like to log in on some of the websites, I know when I was on my phone, I had to like rub my residence permit on the back of my phone so that I could like validate and verify who I am as a person. So it's a very integrated and like closed loop system of like how you are really tracked here like a lot. So it's like very interesting because like, obviously in the US, you're like, when someone says to you, yeah, we'll make sure it happens. We'll make sure that this place gets the ID card or this place gets your biometrics. And you're like, okay, there's obviously going to be a mistake here or something. That really doesn't happen. It's pretty like run like a tight ship. And so everything was, from there on, it was then kind of just managing like utility setup and stuff like that. But my immigration specialist over here did help me, or my relocation specialist in the Netherlands also helped me kind of navigate through things in terms of like translation and stuff like that. So if you do want to make the move over here, I would suggest and recommend that you get someone that's in the country that you are moving to help you navigate through some of these things. Because I think, especially for me in a place where there's another language, it was very helpful to be like, hey, I just got this letter from my landlord or the company that's managing my building. Can you help me navigate through what this says? And she was able to help me out. And just stuff like that is very, very helpful. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think one big difference from the UK to the Netherlands is, like John said, he pretty much needed his resident permit to get his life moving and going. and moving forward with apartments, bills, even getting a phone plan, a credit card, all of those things, or a bank account. It's a little bit different in the US where you need a residence permit, but it really doesn't hold as much power. You pretty much can't do much of anything without at least having a home address. So I think when I first moved to the UK, I just moved into, or I had reserved an Airbnb for about 4 weeks and was going to move to the city and then try to find an apartment as soon as possible. And I found I didn't have a contract signed and moved it, and I did not move into a formal apartment until about 6 weeks of living there. And that was my biggest roadblock. I wasn't even able to open up a true bank account. There are some online banks you can go through in the UK, which was really helpful. But beyond that, you really, really needed that address. But to even register for health, so healthcare is public healthcare in the UK. They have the NHS. Can't even register to see a doctor or anything like that as part of that system until you have an address. And yeah, same thing with banks. It just made it really hard. I think I was getting paid into my US bank account. My company worked it out for the first 2 months there until I actually had that formal bank account, which was really nice of them at the time. But just to show you a little difference in the way countries handle the immigration process and kind of what you need to get up and running in a country.
Yeah, and I should also say that when I came over here in 2021, I was on in the Netherlands what they call a highly skilled immigrant visa, and also as part of that, you can apply for this thing called a 30% ruling, which essentially gives you a tax break of 30% off of the tax bracket you would fall into. So that is another thing that Fragaman helped me out with. But as part of like a highly skilled immigrant visa, when Gabriella came over from the UK to the Netherlands and made that transition, we then had to kind of work through another relocation specialist over here in the Netherlands. And she wasn't a lawyer or anything like that, but
Yeah,
she
this
knew.
was my second visa
Yeah.
processing.
And she wasn't really like a lawyer, but these people, like, they exist. I don't know how I find them, but she.
You reached back out to your previous relocation
yeah, that's what it was.
specialist.
Yeah.
And then, so I was looking to come over. The plan was for me to come over on a partner visa. So John would be my sponsor, and basically all of his rights in the country would transfer directly over to my visa.
Yeah.
So I would be able to work as a highly skilled immigrant and have all this exact same rights. If I qualified for the 30% tax ruling, again, I could do that as well. So we reached out to his relocation specialist. She linked us with someone who worked specifically with partner visas. And we paid her, to be totally transparent, I think it was like €1,000 to help us guide us through the process. She submitted all the paperwork for us and told us exactly what we needed to supply to her. So it was really helpful. I think we both would agree that you should definitely invest in somebody that can help you, whether that's an attorney, a specialist, someone that knows the process, because it just more or less guarantees you'll get that approval. It makes that process so much smoother. So that process for us, it was probably the most in-depth technical process I think we went through, both of us for a visa, because it required a lot of proof of our relationship, and we had to just supply a lot more documents than anything else because it was so specific. So
Gabriella made a scrapbook of our relationship.
Yeah. So the two big things they required, we are not married. If you were married, they would require a marriage certificate, but they required something called a non-marriage certificate that had to be from the US to show proof that we are actually not married. I had never heard of that before. It was really hard to obtain. Fortunately, I have a cousin who is an attorney. I reached out to her and she was able to help us through that process. She was clutch in this. It made what could have been like a months on months process into a relatively smooth process with still a little bit of struggle. She was able to create the document for us, but the biggest obstacle in that was that it had to be signed by, I'm from Texas, so we had to get it signed by not the State Department, like the capital. It had to be sent to the capital, be signed by an official there, sent back to the lawyer, and then we needed the formal copy of that. So then it had to be sent to us. So it was a long journey to get that actual paperwork. And then from there, we were able to finally submit our application after I spent probably a couple days creating proof of our relationship. So the government here needs to know that you actually are in a relationship. So they ask you to pull emails, text, phone calls, pictures, plane tickets, hotel reservations, anything you can that just shows proof that you've been in a committed relationship. And I think the requirement is they want a minimum of 3 years, I believe they said, which fortunately we were way beyond that point. So that did not matter. But yeah, I pulled everything I could. I think I like time-stamped at least everything for each year of our relationship, if not more. I had to dig deep into things, and I probably provided too much information, but rather give more than less. But for that whole process, it took us from the time we started to the time we got approved. So it took us about a month to gather all the paperwork. I think if you are in the US, getting things like a non-marriage certificate is way, way easier. I think we struggled through that process because we were not currently in the US. And then we submitted all of that paperwork after a month. Within probably about 2 weeks, it was relatively quick. I was approved for my biometrics appointment. And then I moved to Amsterdam a few days later, went to my biometrics appointment, maybe about a week later, actually had my residence permit.
Yeah. So it was, I think all in all, like for me personally, like if we tried to figure that out, we probably could have gotten there, but it would have taken us a lot longer, I think, like to do that. So I really, like I said, if you guys can afford the connection to getting a relocation specialist or someone that can help you with immigration, like definitely do it.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. It's if you have the finances to do so, it saves you so much time, so much effort, and just helps you avoid mistakes. So definitely would recommend doing that.
Yeah. And then we kind of had a second situation. Our situation in the Netherlands kind of changed a little bit. So I was, I had my visa situation had changed a little bit. So I was going from a highly skilled immigrant visa that was sponsored by my corporation, and then that was going to change. So
I think we should give them a little bit more detail if you're comfortable doing that. So
yeah, sure.
John was brought over by his company which he was previously working for in the US. He was brought over to the Amsterdam or to the Netherlands with them. And after some time, he decided to leave his job. Him leaving his job would then affect our visas because he would no longer be sponsored by his company.
Yeah.
And that would affect him directly and me indirectly, as my visa follows whatever his visa does. So if his visa is invalid, that makes my visa invalid. So this affected John's visa because he was going to be leaving his job, which indirectly affected my visa as well. So the rule in the Netherlands, as well as most countries, I would say, because it was very similar in the UK, is you have 3 months or 90 days from when your visa ends. So whether it ends before the true ending date due to loss of job or leaving a job, you have 3 months, 90 days to leave the country. So we decided we actually wanted to stay in the Netherlands. So we started this process. We contacted an immigration lawyer. John had previous coworkers with similar experiences and reached out to them. From them, we were able to connect with a great immigration lawyer. If anybody is thinking of coming to the Netherlands and does need an immigration lawyer, we'd be happy to provide their information. I was really impressed with their services. 5 stars for me. Would 100% recommend to anybody. So from there, we went in to have a discussion with this lawyer. He provided an option of a DAF visa, which is specific for Americans looking to immigrate to the Netherlands. So it stands for the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty. So because there are good relationships between the Netherlands and the US, they've created this visa that allows Americans to start a small business or a business in the Netherlands, and meet certain requirements. So you have to have a certain amount of funds in a bank account, and you have to have a formal business set up here. And from that, you could gain the opportunity to receive a visa. The initial visa is 2 years, and then you can apply for extension after that. So we decided to take that route. It was decided that I would start the company, and then we would kind of reverse. So I would be the primary visa holder, and John would become my dependent. So this process was very, very smooth. I would say all in thanks to this lawyer. We barely touched anything. At the most we had to do was redo our biometrics because they were processing a brand new visa. So we would need a new residence card. And then we had to register a business at the Chamber of Commerce here, which was a really simple process. That probably was the most time consuming because the soonest availability to have that appointment was a month out from when we wanted to start applying. So we waited that month, went to that appointment. It was a very, very simple process. I remember I had gone in with my paperwork, which the lawyer had helped me fill out. Even in the description, I think I put like a very lengthy description, and the guy registering my business was like, "This is way too many words. Can you just give me 1 or 2 words explaining what you do?" And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay. It's that informal. Let's do this." And pretty much within 20 minutes, my business was registered, and I had a business here. And then from there, I was able to set up a bank account, which if you do not currently
Business bank account.
A business bank account, yes. If you do not currently live in the Netherlands, that process might take a little bit longer. And I don't know if you can show proof of funds in dollars. I think it has to be in euros.
Yeah.
So I actually do not know the process if you currently do not live in the Netherlands and do not have access to setting up that bank account. So that is definitely a good question to dig into. But for me, because I had already been established here, setting up that bank account, I was already approved for a personal bank account that I had been holding since I moved here. So it made that business bank account setup process very, very smooth, pretty much minimal effort for me. Filled out a couple questions, had the bank account. And then we were able, once that bank account in the business was registered, we were able to start the application process. So we applied for me, and then John as the dependent. I received my approval within about 2 weeks. Once my approval was met for that visa, John received his probably about 2 weeks later. So very smooth process overall. I don't know if you want to add much more to that and your experience with it.
No, I think it was like the only thing I would just kind of make sure you're aware of is like just banking stuff. That's kind of like important because it is a little bit of a different system in terms of like they use like what's called an IBAN, which is International Banking Account Number, I think. Mm-hmm. And you need like these things called BIC codes and SWIFT codes if you want to transfer dollars to euros to actually start up that. So you're gonna have to need to know that and set that up with I had to set up BIC codes and SWIFT codes with Bank of America to make sure money wires were actually coming in in getting translated from euros to dollars and and you can, and it's easy too. There's other ways that you can do it, right? Like you can transfer in dollars from Bank of America to Wise, exchange in Wise from dollars to euros, and then transfer from Wise to, let's say, ING in euros. So just stuff like that, but all of it costs a little bit of money. So you might just want to test it out a little bit, but those are the things because you want to be good on, because I think a large portion of this is dependent on like startup capital that the government like needs to see proof of. So
yeah, and we could be transparent with them because it is the requirement you need. So for a sole proprietorship. So one individual person, the funds that need to be reflected in that bank account as of today is $4,500. If you have 2 business owners and you are, I forgot what they called it, I want to say UF
general partnership,
you need to show double that amount. So it's 9,000. And that just has to be shown in the bank account to receive the approval at all. And then when you are reviewed at that 2-year point to potentially apply for an extension, you have to reflect that that is in there as well. Another part I think we had left out is you do have to have a business financial plan, which our lawyer also helped us with. So he has somebody who works with that can create that document so it reflects what the government would like to see in terms of growth of the company over X amount of time. So that was really helpful for us. We didn't have too much involvement in that because it was all done by an outsourced person, but it was very, very helpful for us and helps us to, if we decide to pursue that business, helps us to reflect on it even more and gives us kind of a game plan for it.
And I think also, like, now that that's all set, it's good. Like, you're going to get a new, like we got, or Gabriella got, and I will be getting a new residence permit, because everybody's residence permit on the back, it tells kind of like what type of permit they or visa they are here on. So you have to get new stuff on that. That's why we had to get biometrics again for this new process. So, but that is either, overall, we are lucky that there was a way. And like these lawyers, I mean, this guy has been in this for a couple decades now, so they know the rules, they know what they could do. So we kind of go in there and say, hey, here's our situation. And he's like, you know, here are your options. You're lucky you're from America because we have this thing called DAFT. And let's say you're to create a business here, and then kind of like walked us through that process, which was really helpful.
Yeah. So really helpful. And now we have a registered business here, which we hope to pursue on a little bit in the future. So yeah, it started a really cool foundation for us and hopefully a bright future ahead.
One thing I will also say, like, as you're coming to the Netherlands, one thing it's so a couple things. If you're coming over here, you actually can bring a car over here. I know people that have come over from the US to the Netherlands and have brought over their cars. And I'm just bringing this up because we've talked about every part pretty much about settling in and getting the legal stuff over here. But you can bring over a car if you want from the US. The regulations are the same. But one thing that Gabriella didn't pursue, but I did, is the driver's license over here. So they made it very clear when I moved over here, I was doing a lot of pickups at IKEA and other places, and I needed to rent cars because it was just going to be too difficult with an Uber and all that other stuff. So the guy was like, hey, just FYI, you have like your first 6 months over here, you can use this. But then after that, you actually do need to have like a Dutch driver's license. And if you don't do that within 6 months and transfer it over, you actually have to pay, like go through driver's ed again. And I think over here, it's like 5,000 euros.
It's really expensive and it's really intense. Like in the US, we get by so easy compared to what they do here. But I don't know if it's quite that expensive, but it is a couple €1,000 with hard tests to pass and then hard like physical driving tests too. They're very strict. And there's a lot more rules because you have so many different types of vehicles on the road, as well as cyclists. So the rules are just stricter. Nothing you couldn't pick up easily, but a lot of things to remember to pass those tests.
Yeah. So I was able to like get an appointment with essentially the DMV over here called the RDW and apply for a license saying, hey, I have a US license. I've just moved over here a couple months ago. And they were able to like, you know, take my photo, create an ID card, and then I got it in the mail. So one to keep an eye on for sure, because you don't want to be here for a few months and not have that ability, because it's going to cost you a lot of money. And also just, you know, hopefully if you're moving over here, you've thought of this too, but it's good to have a driver's license just in case. Like we do a lot of the stuff with our bikes, but like imagine doing a Target trip and buying a lot of stuff and then you have to ride home with it on a bicycle. Like it's not the greatest thing. There are just times where you will need a car. And also like when you're going to other countries,
a lot of other countries like Italy specifically, we talked about this in the Sardinia episode, but they require, you need an international driving license, which would be qualify as a European driving license, or going to AAA and obtaining that international driving license. So a lot of people, if they move to Europe, I think part of that plan is to have that freedom to travel through Europe so easily. So I'm guessing that if you move here, you're going to travel So it's just nice to have that safety net and that extra security of that that European driver's license.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add in terms of visas? My opinion is go for it. Find someone that can help you, a specialist, a lawyer. Go for it. It's worth it. It's worth the investment. It's worth the time. And I guarantee you it'll be something you don't regret.
Yeah, I would just do it. Like,
there's no perfect
if you're on
time,
the
just do
fence,
it.
yeah, if you're on the fence, just go for it. The only reason I say that is because, like, one, given the political climate and the debate performance the past couple of weeks, who knows what the next 4 years in America is going to look like. But also, same here. Like, I think immigration laws and ability to migrate to Europe in a lot of countries in mainland Europe are going to change in the next few years, because there are a lot of kind of pretty intense people that are getting elected into power. So, but just go for it.
On both ends too.
Yeah.
It doesn't just.
Yeah. Just go for it. Like, I feel like moving over here was like, now I feel comfortable, like, and we travel all the time, but like I was saying to Gabrielle, like, now I feel like, okay, if an opportunity and someone was like, okay, we need you to relocate to Australia, or need you to relocate to South Korea or whatever, like, it's not that big of a burden because I've already done that. And honestly, like, being in these like major hubs of airlines, like, you're within like pretty much 2 flights of like 80% of the world, I would say. So like, easily. It's not that far from.
It's not that far, but also one thing I think we forgot to mention is we talked about the DAF visa and how it has to be renewed after 2 years. Once you are in the Netherlands, I believe it is changing and we are grandfathered into this. But once you've hit the 5-year mark, you can qualify for permanent residency in the Netherlands or European permanent residency. You do have to pass some language tests, which I've heard from multiple people is really not that bad. Someone said they like completely, there was like a verbal part where they had to repeat what was said and it was going too fast and they literally said nothing but pass the test. So,
okay. I think
it's definitely achievable, and definitely something that's worth considering, because once you're here for 5 years, you don't have to keep going through that visa process because you can obtain permanent residency.
And that's one of the things that I think like some of the new elected parties in the Netherlands are trying to change, is to like make that language requirement more difficult. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. One of the guys that was elected, he's kind of like the head of the parties, but you know, I think he has an aim to make things tighter, but there are still ways.
Yeah, totally. All right. So if you guys have any more questions about visas, definitely reach out to us personally. We're happy to help you the best we can or connect you with anyone that can help you. Like we said, just do it. Like, close your eyes and jump, literally. But let's move on to our Dutch phrase of the week. We have skipped snack of the week lately, but maybe we can touch about the ice cream we ate in Volendam.
Oh yeah.
So last weekend, we went on a little adventure outside of Amsterdam. John has become really into cycling here. He's been cycling on the weekends and had explored a little bit north of Amsterdam up into
Cowfields.
Cowfields, yeah, but a region where there's 2 cities called Marken and Volendam. Really cute day trip, not too far out of the city if you want something to do. 100% recommend. It had a very Dutch feel to it. If you want like good, true Dutch food, Dutch experience, Volendam was like gold for that.
And it was like Volendam Day. So like you actually saw people in like very old traditional Dutch clothing, which was really, really cool. I thought I actually hadn't seen that since I'd moved to the Netherlands, like especially the males. And if you've never seen like a traditional male Dutch outfit, it's really interesting. Like
kind of looks like a pilgrim,
big baggy pants,
yeah,
and like wooden clogs and stuff like that. It's kind of cool.
And they do in Marken have the old school, maybe original wooden clog factory, which is really cool. You get a tour of it. We didn't do a tour, but you can get
steam powered clog machine,
custom made wooden clogs. Yeah. I don't know if you'd ever wear them, but it's a very cool souvenir to have. It will definitely protect your feet.
Yeah.
But we were out there. We rented bikes. We went on a little adventure outside the center city of Volendam. And we stopped to get some ice cream at this one really cute place.
W. Honing.
And they have one ice cream flavor. I can't tell you what it is. It's like a vanilla.
They say it's vanilla, but it's kind of like a weird, different vanilla.
Yeah, it's not your traditional vanilla, and you can like pair it and make it into sundaes. So that was probably, I guess you could call that our snack of the week. That sounds weird, but
yeah,
it was a really fun experience. It was a beautiful day, cute little town. Everyone just kind of popped by on their bicycles. A lot of Dutch was spoken, but they did speak some English.
Yeah.
And then we were even able to go a little bit further down the street to stop at one of the farms, and they have vending machines from the farms with all of their milk and dairy products
too.
Yeah. So we picked up some fresh yogurt from the farms, nice. And wow, it was so delicious. I've never had yogurt like that. It was just a really happy, wholesome day, getting out in the Dutch countryside and eating some true Dutch food.
Yeah. And then we like went even further, went to a cheese factory and like saw all the cows and stuff like that. And that was really cool. So it was like really like a fun. I've cycled up there, but I've wanted to do all this stuff, but like now I had the time without my bike and without wearing like skin tight spandex. So it was really nice to like actually check out these places, but it's really cool. Like it was like the same, that W. Honing ice cream place, like the recipe is literally still from like 1932 and it's just stayed the same. And like, I remember going there my first time, I'm like, what flavors? They're like, always have only had one and will always ever have one. And so they just have that one vanilla type flavor, but they make sundaes out of it and stuff like that. So
yeah, so it was awesome. Let's move on to Dutch phrase or word of the week. What do you have?
Mine is pindakaas. I like pindakaas. If you guys don't know what it is, it's peanut butter. And there's a lot of it here. People in the Netherlands love peanut butter. And I don't know if this is like an influence from Indonesia or not, because back in the day, the Netherlands tried colonizing Indonesia, and that's why there's a lot of Indonesian food here, like restaurants that have things called rice tafels, which are rice tables, and they have like Indonesian dishes, but there's a lot of places like that. So there's a lot of peanut satay and good stuff like that. So mine is pindakaas, and it's good. If you come here and get fries, get the peanut satay sauce on fries. You'll be like, wow, there's a lot of flavor in this.
Is that the war sauce? Is that the same thing? No.
It's a little bit different, but there's satay, and then there's this other sauce called oorlog, which is Dutch for war. And that's very peanut based as well.
Yeah. My word is, we're just always staying with the foods. I think any Dutch words that I know is primarily foods these days. But mine is slagroom, which is, did I not pronounce it right? Because you're looking at me weird.
No, I think it's slagroom. I don't know.
It's SALAGROOM. Yeah, slagroom. And that means cream. So it's like whipped cream. You'll usually see like hot chocolate met with slagroom. And that's what we had on top of our ice cream. So slagroom means cream.
Yeah.
Slagroom.
Yeah. Slagroom. So we will wrap up this episode. Hopefully we didn't bore you too much, but gave you guys some useful information if you're deciding to move anywhere abroad. Because anytime you move abroad, you do need a visa if you don't hold a passport there.
One last advice I would say if you're moving over to the Netherlands, it's a great place to live. Just be cognizant of the dark and cold and wet winters.
Yeah, like I said, we're very depressed because we want summer because it's freaking July and it's not.
Yeah. I mean, April to like September is typically pretty good, but I mean, you'll get like 5-6 hours of daylight in December, January, but and it's pretty rugged.
Amsterdam's a beautiful place. You'll love it. We didn't mean to end on a dark note like that. John apologizes sincerely. The sun's starting to come out. Hopefully it's going to be a good day today. But thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you guys as always. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to us through our Instagram handle at a couple of expats_podcast and through our YouTube channel. We love hearing from y'all, and we hope you guys have a great day.
Bye.